An alert lights up the phone, and the screen shows 4 words, "We need to talk." Your chest tightens before you finish reading the sentence. The fingers that were about to type a casual reply freeze above the glass. Something in you has already decided this message means trouble, even danger. The question is not what those 4 words actually said, but why they hit your body like a warning shot. A quick mental search returns fragments. An unreturned call from yesterday, a joke that landed wrong last week, an old argument you thought was settled. The mind is already filling in the missing pieces, and almost all of them are heavy. You close the message and try to focus on anything else. But the shape of the sentence hangs in the room like a shadow. The simplest explanation would be that the words themselves carry a threatening meaning. After all, "we need to talk" is a phrase that rarely precedes good news, at least in the movies and in your own memory. So the obvious answer is that you reacted to the meaning of the words, plain and simple. But that answer falls apart the moment you imagine the same 4 words delivered in a different setting. Picture the same friend turning to you after a long walk, smiling, and saying those exact words while holding out an envelope. Suddenly, the sentence no longer reads as a threat. It might even feel like the prelude to a surprise. The words did not change, but the frame around them changed everything. Psychologists have a name for this. Meaning is context dependent. You cannot separate the meaning of an event from the situation that surrounds it, any more than you can separate the shape of a wave from the water. Context reshapes what you see, what you hear, what you remember, and even what you feel in your body. A classic demonstration comes from perception, where the same physical signal produces 2 different experiences depending on the context. You may recall the photograph of a dress that divided the internet into those who saw it as blue and black and those who saw it as white and gold. The pixels on the screen were identical for every viewer. What shifted the color was the brain's automatic assumption about the lighting context in the photograph. If your visual system assumed the dress was in shadow, it subtracted cool tones and produced one answer. If it assumed bright artificial light, it produced another. The same dynamic plays out in hearing. In a well-known effect, when listeners see a video of a mouth saying one syllable while the audio track plays a different syllable, they often hear a third, entirely new sound. The information arriving at the ear did not change, but the meaning arriving in consciousness shifted completely. Now return to that message glowing on the phone. When you read, "We need to talk," your brain is forced to supply the context that the screen removed. You cannot see the sender's posture, hear the melody of their voice, or read the tiny adjustments around their eyes. Into that vacuum rush your current mood, the history of the relationship, and every similar sentence you have ever encountered. Memory works the same way, and that makes the problem deeper. Imagine you are trying to recall a conversation you had with that friend 3 days ago. What you retrieve is not a perfect recording locked in a vault. If you are anxious now, the search will find other moments of tension and overlook the easy laughter you shared. Researchers call this mood-dependent memory. When you are sad, it is easier to remember other times you felt sad. When you are calm, the landscape of the past looks different. The same biography, recalled in different emotional contexts, can read like 2 different lives. None of this is a design flaw. It is a feature of a mind that must find relevant information quickly. But the efficiency comes with a cost. The meaning of the past can shift as your context shifts. A disagreement that felt minor last month may feel like a turning point today, not because the facts changed, but because your interpretive frame changed. The same critical feedback lands differently when it comes from a trusted mentor than when it comes from a new colleague who has never praised your work. When a stranger says, "You made a mistake," you may hear a final judgment. When a close friend who has stood by you for years says the same sentence, you may hear an invitation to grow. The difference is not in the dictionary. It is in the history that wraps around the sentence. Even pain and physical sensation shift with context. Studies with volunteers have shown that the same level of discomfort feels more bearable when people believe it will end soon or when they are distracted by a compelling task. The signal from the body interacts with the meaning the brain assigns to the situation, and that meaning can turn the volume up or down. This does not mean the pain is imaginary. It means that pain, like every other experience, is constructed. The brain integrates the physical signal with expectation, attention, memory, and social meaning, producing the final conscious experience. And that brings us to the central difficulty. The context is often invisible to us. You do not see your brain assembling the color of the dress. You simply see a dress that looks white and gold, or blue and black. You do not hear your brain blending the video and audio tracks. You simply hear a sound that seems to come from the speaker's mouth. You do not feel your current mood selecting memories. You simply remember a list of tense moments and conclude the friendship has been troubled all along. We treat our interpretation as the only possible reading, when in fact it is one reading produced by a specific set of conditions. Now here is the turn that changes the story. When the context is reliable, those guesses save your life. When the context is impoverished or misleading, those guesses can turn a neutral message into a crisis. Words arrive without tone, without gesture, without the immediate opportunity to check your interpretation against a real face. Into that silence, the prediction machinery pours whatever it has available: old wounds, half-remembered criticism, fears that were formed long before this friendship began. The message, "We need to talk," becomes a canvas, and your history picks up the brush. You cannot stop the automatic construction, but you can notice that it has happened. A simple pause can reintroduce the missing context. You might ask, is there anything I should know about the timing of this message? Or what is on your mind? You might check your own state. I am already anxious because of work, and that may be coloring how I read these words. Now we return to that phone, still glowing on the table. The same 4 words are still there, but your relationship to them has shifted. You can feel the initial jolt of alarm, and you can also feel that there is space around that alarm. The sentence no longer announces a fact. It announces that you are missing information, and you can choose to gather some of it before you respond. This is the deeper reversal. Meaning is not a fixed property that lives inside words, images, or memories. Meaning is a relationship between the signal and the frame, and you are always part of that equation. That question does not erase the feeling, but it can prevent the feeling from becoming the only possible truth. The opportunity is not to become a perfectly neutral perceiver, because no one can. The opportunity is to become a more curious interpreter, someone who treats the first meaning as a hypothesis rather than a verdict. In a noisy world, where messages fly without their full human envelope, that curiosity is one of the most practical protections you can carry. You can begin right now with one message you have been avoiding. Notice the story your mind has told about it.